Hello, YouTube world and musicians and Reaper enthusiasts and DAW enthusiasts and anybody that's just interested in recording and multi-tracking and MIDI. And I've been confused about a lot of the things and the functions in Reaper over the past 2 years, and I've slowly figured them out through trial and error and having musicians over and multi-tracking this and that. But I've come to the conclusion that out of 4,500 actions in Reaper, which are commands, in the Mac world they call what we call actions commands. But out of these 4,500 or 5,000 Reaper actions, the most important ones for just doing like GarageBand type recording or very novice recording, if you're not wanting to do anything extremely over the top or off the wall, and not even including things like fade ins and fade outs, which are actually very easy. You can look further into Reaper if you want that. But these on the left are grid, and then down here is items and tracks, and then on the right it's the transport controls, and at the bottom right a bunch of random controls. And so I'll just go through these. The grid, you can actually have the grid lines on or off, and they represent either quarter notes, quarter note triplets, eighth note triplets, 16th or 16th note triplets. And you can use these hotkeys to adjust those and set them the way you want them, and the grid lines will appear as those. You can actually turn the grid lines off, toggling the grid on and off with Alt plus G. Snapping is essentially the left or right edge of an item you can snap onto a grid line. You can turn that on or off even if the grid is if the grid is on only. So if the grid is off, that doesn't work. And using the metronome is not recommended in my mind if you don't have the grid lines turned on. Show snap grid settings, insert time signature. This is very handy. And if you're using the grid, you want to use this. Insert time signature change at cursor if you have time signature changes. Marker at current position is M. You can drag any media file, usually any type of audio file, with Alt plus I, and it normally just creates a new track automatically and puts it at the bottom. Cursor to start of current measure. Looping, setting the loop point and ending the point. Down here, items and tracks. Items are individual pieces of audio or MIDI. And then you've got previous track and next track. And I have these buttons mapped out for these 4,500 actions to 3 different MIDI devices they function essentially like video game controllers for a video game, but instead of 1 controller for a video game, we're using 3 controllers for Reaper, and each of them have a bunch of buttons that are mapped to actions in Reaper or the hotkey that the action is associated with. So previous and next I've got on this 88 key Novation MIDI controller keyboard, and track left and right actually moves these previous and next tracks. Insert name of a new track. You can actually hit a hotkey and then type out the name. Duplicate track. Select all items, and that's just like Windows. Control A selects all items. And view effects for current track. So you would use the track over and previous track button, and then hit the hotkey or the assigned button on the MIDI controller for view effects for current track, and it would bring up all the effects for that track and all the chain and everything. View effects chain for master track. That's important. Shift plus F. I think that's native to Reaper. Unmute all and unsolo all. Those are handy and they're hotkeys. Split item at play cursor. That's very frequently used. That's S on the keyboard, or you can have a button mapped like I do on this contour. Shuttle Pro. Trim items left at cursor. I've got a button mapped to that. Trim items right at cursor. And if you have the grid turned on and are able to, snap and zoom in and use these controls because it trims wherever the edit cursor is, so you can zoom in and put the cursor right where it needs to be and then trim the right or the left edge off of an item with these two actions. Item, open built-in MIDI editor. You can click on an item and this hotkey would bring it up. So there is no hotkey in Reaper. I've got one of them made up. I didn't put it on here, I don't guess. But I've got it mapped to one of these buttons. But you have to come up with a hotkey first. Pitch item up 1 semitone. That works with both audio and MIDI. That's pretty wild. Pitch item down with 1 semitone. Pitch item up 1 cent. That is 1/100th of a semitone. And down 1 cent, and that works with both audio and MIDI. Notation. This brings up the, for MIDI only, Alt +4 will convert your track to MIDI or standard notation from MIDI. So glue items, you have to glue items in order to loop items. So if you want to get good at looping, you have to understand how gluing item works. And Control + Shift + G. Normalize items, Control Shift and N. Item edit. Move left edge of item to edit cursor, and there is no default hotkey for that. You have to assign it. So that's really a very frequently used action. And at first I didn't realize it until tinkering with it for a while. So I've done like 3 pieces of music, and this is what I've come up with. This is the most frequently used actions that I used. So, of course, the transport over here, stop, play, record, start of project. This is, you can set the play rate back to the original play rate if you change the tempo. You can hit Control, Shift, and Backspace, and it sets it back to the original project play rate. And what's funny is when you change the play rate, it does not change the pitch. It's digital, so it makes sense, but it's always nice to not hear Alvin when you speed up the track. Show transport, which I've always got mine by default showing. Random actions. So the rest of these are just actions that I couldn't put in the other 3 categories. Project settings, Alt and Enter. Toggle metronome on and off. Undo and redo, those are very frequently used. Quantize note positions to grid, that's for MIDI only. I should make note of that on here. Quantize is Q, humanize H. Show hide router, I've got that mapped to a button on the contour. Show hide mixer, I've got multiple displays and you only see one of them in this YouTube video, but I've got the mixer on a separate display and it's always showing. And all the plugins and information about plugins is on that secondary screen. So actions menu is F4. If you want to get better at Reaper, study the actions menu. And that's the best advice I could give anybody. Mouse mods, Shift + F1. Video, there's actually a video editor in this. Control Shift + V. Tap tempo, H. Show all floating windows is Control Alt and F. Master I/O, Shift + I. And for percussionists, rectangles and diamonds, you can change the MIDI, or actually, you can use, for non-pitched instruments like my drum module, you can use rectangles and diamonds, like percussion instruments, I should say, for inline for these, for recording MIDI. Toggle full screen, inline MIDI editor, peak watcher, that's really handy. And then these last 2 commands are when you finish up your project. You would save project as, and then you would render lastly. And that's all I've really got for this video. I hope it helps somebody. If anybody's new to Reaper and you want to just get into it real fast, there's a couple things in the options menu and setting up, like resetting all MIDI devices under the MIDI devices menu. If you can't get your MIDI device up and running, you have to reset MIDI devices, make sure that everything's USB's plugged in and powered on. There's not a lot of troubleshooting to Reaper that is not extremely user-friendly. Everything at this point, version 7.9 or 8.1 or whatever that they're at now, is pretty user-friendly and easy to figure out. So everything's either in the options menu or actions menu, or one of the things that I just mentioned just now is really the bulk of understanding. So I've got other videos in my YouTube channel, Snarf23, that you can look up further down that go into those specific things like setting up MIDI and setting up audio for recording, clicking on the tracks and assigning an analog number to each track is very easy. All these things are very simple. But again, thank you very much. Listen to this BBC Orchestra French horn that is extremely impressive. Or at least I thought it was. Okay, everybody signing off. Have a great day. I hope this helps somebody. Thank you very much, YouTube. Bye.